Ladies and gentlemen, people of all gender expressions, thank you for checking out the North Bank Media Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Strevens. Joining me on the show this morning were Kristine Archibald and Makennah Walker. Now, Kristine is Executive Director of the River Valley Alliance, and Makennah is the Communications. I was really glad to be able to sit down with both of them and have a pretty broad, wide-ranging discussion about what the River Valley Alliance does. So, to be clear, it's a nonprofit organization. Number one, they lobby all three levels of government for funding for projects that make the River Valley more connected and more usable. And we're talking about the River Valley here. We're talking about the North Saskatchewan River Valley between Fort Saskatchewan to the east and Devon in the west. So that's a pretty long corridor of about 100 kilometers, of course, including Edmonton right in the middle. Second, they do a lot of informative and educational pieces about trail use, sustainable use, trail etiquette, where to hike, how to hike, and it's not just hiking, of course. There's use the water for kayaking, rafting, cycling, you name it. I would say if you're looking to get more informed about the River Valley in Edmonton and surrounding areas, to check out the River Valley Alliance website and social media. Obviously the North Saskatchewan River Valley has a very big impact on me personally and on the podcast. The podcast takes its name from the north bank of the North Saskatchewan River where I grew up. So to have people like this who advocate for the river, far more than I even do, it was humbling and it was important. And this is an episode I'm very proud of. I'm very gracious to Kristine and to Makennah for their time and for speaking as best they could on everything that the River Valley Alliance does. We did this outside in R.V.A. Park. Luckily, we had a roof over our heads, the gazebo, but there were some weather breaks, but it all adds to the atmosphere, and it had to be done that way. So please enjoy this conversation with Kristine Archibald and Makennah Walker. Well, this is great. Kristine Archibald and a special guest, Makennah Walker. So thank you both for joining me.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank
Right
you
on.
for the invitation.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Like I've been saying, this podcast takes its name from the River Valley. It's my life. I grew up in the River Valley, so then to have people who are as connected as you guys are on the show is actually humbling. It's a big moment for me and for the show. So,
well, thank you. We're absolutely our pleasure to be here.
So I think the backstory kind of was, I saw what you were doing, the video campaign, the social media video campaign, and I asked Makennah if I could produce a video. She said, well, I don't think so, but the podcast sounds interesting. How about the podcast? So maybe talk to me about, first of all, what is that video campaign and what are you hoping to achieve with that?
Well, I think I'll actually let Makennah take this one since it's her video campaign. But of course, it's all about advocacy and awareness.
Okay.
So awareness of the trails. Since COVID-19, awareness of the trails has skyrocketed, tripled in a lot of areas.
Wow.
It's seeing unprecedented use. Kind of right when it's needed. It's been there for us. We call our River Valley our hero, our COVID hero, because it's been there for us no matter what through the ups and downs that we've all faced in this past 18 months. So Makennah came up with the idea of a video series to sort of highlight different areas, get some ideas about etiquette and usage out there. Okay. And also advocacy is a big part of what we do right now as well, because we are coming to the end of our Phase 1 grant.
Right.
So we'll soon be advocating, our government authorities for our Phase 2 grant. So,
sure.
We need to have some statistics about usage and some of the more concrete building blocks in order to put that together. So, but I'll let Makennah talk about the video series a little bit, maybe.
Sure. So the video series is highlighting the River Valley as the hero of COVID of the last year and a half, and will hopefully continue into the future. And there's a lot of ways that I don't think, not necessarily everybody thinks about. So going for a walk in the River Valley is, a lot of people do that, or going for a run, but there's so many other ways to utilize the River Valley, whether it's something like active commuting is becoming a really big thing, active transport. So kind of getting people thinking about, I can use the River Valley to, commute to work when it reopens, or, go visit friends or whatever. And then also things like, forest bathing or bird watching or foraging. Like there's so many ways to connect with the valley, and then also teaching the respect with the increase of 300 to 400% in most trails. They're also in some ways getting a little bit trashed. So how as citizens can we do better for our river valley, and how do we take care of it?
Beautiful. That's interesting. First, what is forest bathing? Like swimming in the river?
No, people do that too.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
But
what is it?
But
like sunbathing?
Forest bathing is, that people connecting to the earth. So taking your shoes off and finding a trail or a hunk of grass or something, and just really connecting to, the frequency of the earth.
Okay.
So
like grounding?
Yeah.
Okay.
AKA grounding.
Okay, it's the same thing. I'm into that. Do people do that? Is that popular?
One of the last 2 weeks video was all about grounding in the forest bathing, and I think people are becoming more aware of just going and taking solace and tranquility in the river valley.
Sure.
So it's, again, most people think of the river valley trails of going for a hike or a run, but there's lots of options.
No, there's many, and what I like about your video campaign is you're sort of centering the issue, centering the activity around a person. It's a personal story.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
That's cool. Are you? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna comment on your comment about personalizing the experience, because I think the River Valley is something different for each person, even if it is running and walking in the same activities. Mm-hmm. Each person connects in a different way. And, it's all about not just physical health, but mental health, as COVID has shown us.
Totally.
And, those connections are hugely important.
And the River Valley isn't for a specific gender or specific age or a specific ability. It's for all ages, all orientations, and physical abilities. We have elite athletes training in our River Valley, and then we have people that are not elite athletes and just needing a place to find some beauty. So
right on. Yeah, I was here in Laurier Park Saturday and Sunday, and for one, it was jam packed with people. Like,
I heard.
It was like
I heard.
lines to get in, lines to get out. But there was quite an elderly lady walking across the path. I just thought she deserves this as much as anybody. I'm not going to wait for her to cross the road, but
there's no distinction here between age, ethnicity, ability. Nothing. It's for everyone.
That's great. And so you gave me a number. I'm going to let you say it. River Valley usage is up. Do we know percent-wise?
In some areas, 300%.
300%.
Yes.
That's insane. Well, I saw that here this weekend. It was like, and two. So this is good that you guys exist, because there was a lot of people who I think maybe weren't as familiar with the etiquette. They were parking in the middle of the road to let people out. They were kind of just parking wherever. Is that part of the video campaign or the advocacy generally, as to like the etiquette side of things?
It's become bigger and bigger since COVID. We had launched some etiquette blogs, I guess, on our blog post, just regarding etiquette, because we do get some inquiries and some questions, like, if there's a cyclist and a walker who has right-of-way, because most of them are multi-use paths.
Right.
So Makennah has done some research, and of course she's an avid user of the trail system herself in many different ways. So she's familiar with a lot of that etiquette, and it's not necessarily a lot of it is bylaws and regulations, but some of it's just common sort of manners, or just respecting each other, that we're going to be out here using it, and we need to respect each other and be kind to each other. And Makennah can probably speak more about the actual etiquette and things like that.
Sure. Well, I'm fascinated by it. Are you seeing, is there an etiquette problem, or people generally?
Yes. There's definitely etiquette problems in a lot of areas, especially when you get the multi-use. They're all multi-use. Most places are multi-use spaces, and you get between mountain bikers and hikers, and when you throw in dogs and all those various things, and some things are common sense, and some things aren't necessarily common sense. And I think the biggest thing is, when in doubt, just default to kindness, because it's People don't know there's new users to the valley, and even older users that have been using it forever that, kind of we get complacent.
Definitely.
In our ways and how we respond. So yeah, just defaulting to kindness and just really staying aware, and the valley's for everybody. So
I love that message. And some awareness too, I guess, and some compassion. Like I love to come flying down from Laurier Heights right down here and into the dog park. I've started to learn, just slow down, because those dogs are everywhere, those people are everywhere, and you have to be aware, because again, not every user is as savvy on the trails as maybe you or I.
That's right, and there actually are speed limits, believe it or not, for cyclists.
Really?
So
Don't tell me that. I don't want to know.
Especially when coming around a blind corner or a downhill hill or something,
Right.
you just, it'd be nice to say you own the trail, but you don't.
No, you really don't. And that's the whole thing. It's, there's a whole, and forgive me if this is too far off the track that we're on, but there's a whole movement with land acknowledgement for Indigenous people, and we can talk about that. And I like the idea. I was talking to a friend on Sunday, and he brought up, how about a land acknowledgement for the sake of the land? Like, let's acknowledge what this land is purely without a human footprint on it. People, you really have to have a respect and a reverence for this, because it's bigger than us, and not everybody has this either.
That's right, and it's a gift. It's a gift to us, and we should treat it as such. Yeah.
Right on. It is a gift. The big thing that I wanted to get into, I guess the first thing, is this idea of a unified corridor where the River Valley Park runs from Devon to Fort Saskatchewan. I understand that's about 88 kilometers, and we're 70% connected. Does that mean that if I wanted to walk on foot from let's say Devon to Fort Saskatchewan, I couldn't do it? I could do it, but is it?
You could, but you wouldn't be on the RVA path, so to speak. There's some single track stuff out there. You'd have to probably bushwhack a little.
Doing some bushwhacking?
You might have to get on the water at some points in order to cross the river and that type of thing. So the RVA Trail, by the end of 2024, will be 75% connected. So it's actually closer to 100 kilometers once it's done.
Okay, you heard it here first. 100 kilometers.
100 kilometers, and so there will be right around 78 kilometers connectivity by the end of 2024. That's at the end of our phase 1 grant.
Right
Those
on.
projects are already in the works, either planning conception phase or already midway construction.
Okay.
So yes, that was always the vision of the volunteers that came together 20 years ago across then 7 municipalities, now 6. But that was always the vision, to connect that 100 kilometers worth of trail from Devon to Fort Saskatchewan, so that you did not have to go on any major roadways,
right,
or get it in the water, so to speak, to cross the river, that there would be a pedestrian footbridge. So yes, essentially, once it's complete, you could start walking in Devon and end up in Fort Saskatchewan.
Are you going to do it when it's done?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to do it too. How long do you think it would take?
Depending on what mode of transportation
True.
you're using.
On foot, barefoot.
Barefoot. Forest bathing all the way.
Yes, forest bathing the whole way. 100 kilometers, that's pretty serious.
It would take a couple of days.
For sure. For sure it would. Oh, that'd be so cool. What's the rule as far as camping on the... It's a no?
Yeah, not within the River Valley unless it's a designated camping site. I mean, there are some, like in Devon Lions Park, that's overnight camping there.
White Mud Park.
There's some other areas that probably have designated overnight camping, but most of it's probably day use or parks that close 11 p.m., that type of thing.
Okay.
So you would have to be aware of that and have, lodging along the way or something.
Okay.
Like that,
I was going to ask about that then. So, because ultimately that's part of the attraction one day, is that you could do this walk. It's equal to the West Coast Trail or the Cabot Trail. You would have to have camping in reasonable intervals, right?
Plan it out like you would on any of those other trails. You're not just going to start walking and have no idea where you're going to end up or stop for the night or eat or anything else, right? Some people may, and may the force be with them.
Yeah, no kidding. Good luck.
But have a plan, just like you would any other time.
I guess what I'm trying to say is there enough camping amenities that exist now, or is that a big part of the push here?
I think that's something we should look into a little bit more, actually, as the trail unfolds. Is overnight camping's never been something that we focused on, but now that the trail's getting built out and we will start marketing it once it's named, I think those are things that the questions we're going to get. So definitely we'll have to do some more research into that. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So then the issue of private land ownership comes up, right? So if I wanted to do that walk, would I be going through stretches of privately owned land?
You would be. Of course, we don't build trail on unless we have a utility right-of-way agreement with the landowner,
Okay.
and or we purchased the property, and or sometimes it's just a lease agreement or some type of thing. We don't.
Okay.
I mean, our paths aren't super wide or really invasive. Normally, they're top of bank. Normally, they're on something that we would already be environmental reserve, like municipal
Okay.
reserve by the municipality that's in. So, you're not trespassing by any means if you're on
Understood.
an RVA trail.
Okay, right on.
So don't wander off the trail, so
Sure.
to speak, because some of it, of course, is privately held land that just has a right of way across it.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Okay, so that's an important distinction though too. Is I've lost it, but privately owned land. You guys are specifically not infringing on that. Your trails are mapped to go around.
We go around. We're on municipally owned property
Okay.
already, or we have had an agreement in writing, registered on land titles with the landowner. I mean, we're not in the business to make anyone upset or to
Sure.
trespass or anything like that. So.
Have you had any conflict with private landowners in any of this? Or
I wouldn't say conflict so much as there. You yourself probably, if you owned a private piece of parcel that bordered the river, you would have questions as to, well, how is this going to affect me? But generally we've had, I'm not going to say that there hasn't been some landowners that are less excited about it than we
Sure,
are,
sure.
but in conversation, and once they really look at our plan of action and what we're actually asking, it's a really small piece of property that we need access to, and generally, like I said, it would already be considered environmental or municipal reserve
Okay.
should they develop that property anyway. So,
understood.
yeah.
Okay. Well, do they stand to gain anything from having?
Sure. I mean, some of these properties are owned by developers, land
Right.
developers, so they've just bought up parcels that they plan to develop in the future at some point.
Okay.
Well, a pedestrian trail, especially if it's going to be a residential area, I mean, a trail backing your property or for the use of the residents is a huge bonus and adds
Okay.
huge value to your developed land.
Okay, right on. So it's a net positive.
It can be,
It
for
can
sure.
can
Yep,
be.
yep.
I guess in my head I was imagining sort of that rural stretch. I guess between the southwest corner of Edmonton into Devon. Is there like maybe farmland or private use land out there? That's
Lots of private land there.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that quadrant is being. Sorry, just let the truck go by
Yeah,
here.
sure. Appreciate that.
That's one of the reasons that will be our last piece of connectivity is
Okay.
because it is all privately held lands, and there's lots of negotiation and
Okay.
talks that need to go on there.
Sure.
So.
So that's, and again, I'm sensing because when I first talked to Makennah, she referred to that area as the void.
Well, we just call it the gap.
Oh, the gap.
The gap.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not the void.
No.
I made that up.
I'm sure there are many, many things there, but it's a gap.
black
It's a
hole.
trail gap.
Okay.
It's our gap. Yeah.
But looking at the plan of action and looking at the website, you're targeting that for phase 2, correct?
Phase 2, that's
Right.
correct, yeah.
Well, before we go there, let's maybe talk a bit more about phase 1 of this development, you tell me. Where are we at with phase 1? When did it begin?
It began in 2003 when the RVA was incorporated
Okay.
by its 7 municipal shareholders as a not-for-profit charity. So we are a registered charity. People can donate if they so choose through a website called Canada Helps, and there's a link on our website for that as well. But we gained a $50 million grant from the provincial government,
Okay.
and so that was matched with $30 million from the federal government, and then the municipalities put in the other portion, the 1/3 portion. So
Okay.
it's a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 funding model all
Okay.
across all 3 levels of government when the RVA plan of action was envisioned. So the 7 municipalities sat down and said, let's create this,
Okay.
let's work together. It's one of the most shining examples of regional cooperation that you'll ever see. And it's worked fantastically. And so that original plan of action was 13 infrastructure projects throughout the 6 municipalities. And we are about on the last 3 to 4 projects.
Okay.
So there's been huge gains in the last 10 or 12 years. Such things as the Terwilliger Footbridge, the funicular, all of those kilometers worth of trail.
Yes.
We've, funded part of a pavilion at West River's Edge in Fort Saskatchewan. Lamoureux in Sturgeon County, Strathcona County has lots of trail that's been added. It's throughout all of them. A little bit of parking additions, some washrooms, and all those important things
Sure.
have gone into it as well. And more of that will come in phase 2. But so about 75% complete in 2024.
Okay. Well, that's great. That must feel good.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling, and we still maintain wonderful working relationships with all 3 levels of government. Everyone's a supporter and a fan, and it's paid dividends when it was most needed. So
I love it. I mean, that's, like you say, it's a shining example of cooperation among different municipalities, different levels of government. That's rare, is it not? Especially for a nonprofit.
Well, it's rare to get that kind of cooperation. I'm not going to say rare. It's becoming more and more common and popular as we go forward into this feeling of regionality and that we're just bigger than one thing. It's
sure.
we're one planet at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
So. But it's becoming more and more popular. But it was one of the first and best examples of regional cooperation.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is there a sense among the municipalities that we need to spread the funding and the projects out evenly across? It's like we're not just going to do all of Edmonton first and then
There was absolutely that idea that every municipality needed to benefit.
Sure.
Of course, they benefit in a different proportion based on population and usage,
Okay.
and where the infrastructure was most needed. But connectivity was the key, and so we needed to connect. The municipalities are on varying sides of the river, and so there was key footbridges, and there's still a couple key footbridges that need to be put into place for full connectivity.
Right.
So with connectivity in mind, the infrastructure was thought out after that.
Okay, understood. Connectivity was kind of the overarching,
Yes.
Modus operandi or whatever. This is what it's about.
Exactly.
Cool. So, and those two footbridges you mentioned, that's more part of phase 2?
In the southwest, yes.
In the
so
southwest.
There'll be a footbridge connecting Devon to Parkland, and then Parkland into the city of Edmonton. So
right.
2 more, yeah.
Is there not 2 other ones?
There are. That's in
east?
phase 1.
That's phase 1 still. So those are going to be finished
those
sooner.
Those will be finished in 2024.
Okay.
Should they proceed with construction, which every indication is that at this point that they will.
Okay.
We have very much buy-in and support from both the City of Edmonton and Strathcona County for the Edmonton to Strathcona County footbridge. That's currently in concept design. It's going into its final design phase, and then it will go. So it's been approved to funding up to the final design, and all of the consultations and environmental studies and all of those things are underway or will be completed. So just the construction phase remains, which is another $2 to $3 million just to actually
build the damn
build the thing. Yes. So, and with, of course, the RVA's portion, which is significantly more than that, but that's where the majority of the funding is coming from, because it will utilize the remaining funds that we have in our phase 1 grant.
Okay.
But it's a huge connectivity piece for us. It connects, Sturgeon to Fort Saskatchewan will be connected with the underslung Highway 15 pedestrian bridge, which is currently in construction, already approved all the way through. So that will open in 2022, 2023. And then with that Strathcona County to Edmonton piece, we get connectivity all the way from Sturgeon, Fort Saskatchewan to the West Anthony Henday Bridge in Edmonton, which is about 78 kilometers.
Oh, well, then you could at least do the Edmonton loop.
That's right.
Right.
You could certainly do the Edmonton loop. Yeah.
Now, I didn't think about this, but is the idea here that you could do the one leg of your journey on one side of the river and then cross and be able to do it?
There are some secondary trails that are in our plan of action that would help. You'd be on one side of the river. You could do some loops on that side, some different trails that necessarily wouldn't cross at a bridge. There'd be only sort of that one trail that crosses at the bridge.
I see.
But certainly there'd be loops on either side or some secondary trails for sure.
Okay, that's interesting. I got to tell you, I think it's great. I had some friends that we used to be a little more crazy in our younger days, and we always dreamed of, maybe some mushrooms, have some kind of spiritual experience and hike that full loop from Devon to Fort Sask. I think maybe we will.
Well, it's becoming more and more popular, those, sort of guided hallucinogen things and things like that. I hear that's becoming very popular.
No experience with it.
You never know.
It could be a thing. I mean, if we do it right, if we do it safely and legally.
Goodness. Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be a June in the River Valley without
some wind and rain.
A storm at 11 in the morning.
Exactly.
I got woke up by thunder. Was it yesterday morning at like 6 in the morning? It was just.
Oh, I think it was most of the night, but
yeah. A great storm last night too, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's. I guess I found myself. Well, I never thought too much about it. It was like I watched a large part of that River Valley swath get developed as I grew up. I guess Westridge and into the Terwilliger Footbridge, of course, and all that. Over on the other side, the Alfred Savage Center, they're redoing the staircases all over. I always just assumed that was municipal money. It is.
Well, I mean, they do get funding, of course, from the province and the federal government to some extent. That's just how municipal funding works. But those are City of Edmonton projects, and those are outside the mandate of the RVA. We just deal with projects that are within our plan of action, those 13 projects that I talked about. Okay. So each municipality has their own, parks plan and green space plan and all that type of thing, that other than maybe a stakeholder, if it connects to something that would be considered an RVA trail, we may be, we may be in on some of the conversations about it, but certainly that's their own forte. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, and then forgive me if you've explained this already, but for these 2 grants that you got, they're from all 3 levels of government funding. And so how does that, do you lobby for those? Or do you present yourself and ask for this money, or what was that like?
It was lobbied for back in the early 2000s, and to the province, generally to the province first and foremost. Generally, if you get provincial funding, the federal funding will come.
Okay.
And the municipalities were already on board. They basically had said, if we can get this provincial grant, we'll match it 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 with the federal funds. So it started sort of steamrolled from there. So it was definitely something that was lobbied for. And, as I said, we're working on our advocacy plan for our phase 2 grant. So, we will, they're within their budgets and things like that. So the budgets roll out, the province rolls out their budget, and then we find areas and ways, that they have this funding for things like trails and whatnot. And then we apply for those grants.
Okay, I see. So it's not all necessarily given at once. It's kind of you.
It can be.
Okay.
Our phase 1 grant was given at once, but certainly not always. I mean, sometimes it's just a 3-year term, or for certain projects, or however they decide to do it.
Okay. I don't mean to make a meal out of the money, but I am fascinated by it in some ways, because to me it's one of those things where some money is going somewhere where we can kind of all agree that it should be. Were there hurdles to getting that funding?
Well, I wasn't with the RVA at the time. That was, 13 to 15 years, almost 20 years ago now, that they actually did the original lobbying, things like that. But I would imagine there were hurdles. There always are. But I think the municipalities had done so much good footwork and laying the groundwork, and they already had their plan of action in mind when they made the proposal to the province, that it just seemed like a win-win for everyone, and it's exactly what it turned out to be. So
absolutely. I don't want to overdo it, but to me it's just fascinating that we have this cooperation. But for the government to pitch in, I'm sure there's some amount of thought that goes into what is the economic payoff here, what is the how's it going to benefit, how's it going to line our pockets, how's it going to benefit people down the road financially. So I thought it was interesting on the executive summary from 2018. They pegged the natural, social, and economic capital of the river between $350 and $650 million. Can you talk a little bit about how the river valley and how this connected corridor could benefit the region on an economic level?
Well, I think it flows from just overall health and well-being of the public. I mean, the trails allow for places that people can get out there for lots of physical exercise. There's lots of very athletic people, or people that are just out for a walk, but I mean, that all benefits your health and your mental well-being, and that pays dividends down the road. I mean, if you're not healthy, either mentally or physically, it affects your ability to work. It's more of a drain on the economic programs that are out there for people that need help. Just health and well-being is a huge component of being a healthy community. Okay, so you see the economic, I guess, benefit as being tied more to those other overlapping circles of social and economic, natural. Absolutely, for sure. Okay. And active transportation is becoming a big hotspot kind of conversation now, especially within the federal government. And so, you younger generations don't necessarily want to jump in your car and go everywhere. No, if you can jump on your bike or walk or hike or run or, skateboard or inline skate or however you get around, if there's a way for you to do that on a trail to get from A to B to work or to visit friends and family or just to, meet each other, then you will. And I'm not just saying the younger generations do that, all generations do that, but oh wow, it's going to rain, huh? But that's also a big thing, and that just reduces our carbon footprint at the end of the day as well. Less car usage, all that stuff, and just less of a carbon footprint. Right on. Okay, well, let's pause for a second here, and we'll see if this blows over. Is it gonna hail? it's not blowing in
No,
anyway.
I don't mind that.
This, I think, is actually the picnic site that we're trying to request for the ambassador event.
This one is?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, right on. When is that? When is the event?
End of July.
End of July?
This is one of the alcohol permitted sites.
One of them is, it's either like one of these two, but it's one of them, yeah.
So what's the ambassador? I looked at that briefly on the site. I should have dug in a little more on that, but do you want to talk about the ambassador program?
Makennah can probably talk about that more than I can.
Sure.
Just swing that. Yeah, absolutely. You can even just tilt it in a little. Yeah, you bet. Perfect.
So the ambassadors, anybody can be an ambassador, and there was 3 different types before, and still are the ones that help promote social media, people that can help out at events, and now the third one is escaping me. But those are the 2 main ones. And like during COVID, there was really nothing physically to help out with because there was no events, there wasn't anything. But now that things are opening, ambassadors, when we're at different events, having a booth, just supporting with getting information out, or manning a booth, and with social media, they're out photographing, videoing, sharing, sharing their love of the river valley using our primary hashtag of Trek the Trails. Supporting with, again, there's so many people in the diverse interests and knowledge base, so guest blogs, just kind of information based. So yeah, our event at the end of July will be just a small get together, since we haven't been able to really see anybody in 2 years.
Yeah, basically, right.
To just kind of, catch up and see where people are at, and see where interest is for, volunteering, various things.
Okay, that's great. I love all that. I think it's so cool that, first of all, that you guys do what you do. I wasn't really aware of it until I found you guys on Instagram, and I still wasn't really sure what it was until I really started talking to you. So kudos to you. I think it has to be said.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please subscribe on YouTube and give us a like. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. And now, back to the conversation. Has there been any trouble in getting ambassadors, or is it like there's a pretty big demand or supply, I guess, to do this thing?
I think I wouldn't say trouble. I mean, again, the engagement over COVID, because the only thing really that could do was, social media stuff. And I see every day looking at our hashtag Trek the Trails, there's lots of people that are out doing, consistently and sharing things like that. So no, I wouldn't. I think people love the river valley and are avid lovers of sharing it. And I know that there's people that run other volunteer outdoor clubs that lead hikes and walks, who are also ambassadors through us, and lots of river valley photographers who we use photographs for various things. So
okay, now let's say I don't want to be an ambassador, but I'd just like to do more for the river valley. Or what's kind of your call to action to the average person?
I think when you're out there, be respectful of etiquette, like we talked about before, but also maybe take a bag with you and pick up some garbage if you see it.
Okay.
If you're just out there utilizing it yourself, use the garbage cans, use the designated picnic sites, stay on the trails, don't forge your own path. Okay. Respect the wildlife as well, and the plant life, because without those, we don't have a river valley. So just be respectful. Okay,
respect is number one. Now, I think I asked the etiquette question, but do you see a lack of disrespect or a lack of respect in some ways around the river valley, or?
For sure.
You're nodding.
Various conversations with some of the other, the user groups of the city, and there's a lot of public consult going on right now for various projects with the city of Edmonton. So I've sat in on various meetings, and just respect and staying on trails. People cutting their own trails sometimes can be an issue, and not realizing the impact that it has. And people like the Edmonton Mountain Biking Alliance have agreements with the city of Edmonton, so the trails are they're not official city trails, but they've received training. They've got,
Interesting.
on how to grade them so that they're not randomly, let's put a trail here. They're very thought out. So,
Okay.
So when people, are out just hacking out a trail,
It's not cool.
no.
Well, that actually brings me up. A friend of mine told me to ask about this, and you may not know, but maybe you did just answer. There was a spot that we used to love, west of here, and we went there the other day, and somebody had hacked a trail right through it, and it was a well-groomed trail, and I wonder if that was the Mountain Bike Alliance. You don't have to throw them under the bus, but I'm just curious.
Anything that they do would have been approved by the city
Okay.
of Edmonton, and they're trained also in how to maintain their trails.
Interesting.
So, and if it was them, it was an approved trail, and if it wasn't, then we don't know.
No, right, you can't speak to that. No problem. Man, not to overdo it, but that spot out west, I guess, basically between here to the Fort Edmonton footbridge, which stop there. Was the Fort Edmonton footbridge at all were you guys involved with that?
Not the bridge itself, really, but some of the trails connecting up to it, yes.
Because that bridge is a beauty.
It is. Well, the Terwilliger footbridge as well. It's
Oh, yeah.
iconic. I mean, it's actually the longest spanning suspension footbridge in North America.
That's
It
wild.
was modeled after the Golden Gate in San Francisco, which
Okay.
of course is a driving bridge, but that was what it was modeled after, and it's quite an iconic piece of infrastructure.
And so you were more involved with that one?
Well, that was an
was
RVA
one of your
project
for
yeah.
sure. What can you tell me about it besides that? I mean, I love the lights. I love the design. Who maybe designed that thing, first of all?
I'm not entirely sure who the actual architect was. Most of our architecture is designed by Architectural Works, or at least they go out and get the contractors that do most of that work. But of course, the City of Edmonton project manages all of their own infrastructure, so they would have decided on the engineering and all that.
I see. So at the end of the day, whatever municipality is getting this infrastructure, it's on them to manage the project, and you guys just advocate for the creation of it?
Not necessarily. The City of Edmonton, yes, because
Okay.
they have such an engaged and large planning department all on their own that they already have contractors that they go to tender with and things like that.
Okay.
So the City of Edmonton does tend to project manage their own projects. Some of the smaller municipalities, though, no, they don't.
Okay.
They just don't have that, that big deep well to draw from as far as their parks planning and things like that goes. So that is when our architectural work steps in and works with them.
Okay.
In whatever capacity they need, and we end up getting some of the contracts and things like that in partner with them.
That's interesting. So you are associated with some, would you say, architectural
Works.
firms?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And that's a private company that you guys are.
Well, they've been with us. They have given so much in-kind work. I mean,
Okay.
we do pay for some contractual things, but so much in-kind work has been given there as well. They've been with the RVA since the plan of action was developed.
Oh,
They
wow.
were actually the architectural firm that worked on the plan of action with the original municipalities, and just lots of in-kind work and so invested with the RVA.
Sure. Why do they do that?
Just passion. It's a passion project.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that I would like to go there a little bit too. Then, do you find that when you're getting into the nitty gritty with government officials and asking for money and dealing with private companies to do the building, is there a sense of like this is something similar to when they built the arena downtown? There was a lot of pride and passion associated with building that. Do you find that too with the river, that people are excited to be a part of it? It's not building a condo. It's
Absolutely. And, I don't get to engage, unfortunately, firsthand with a lot of the contractors. That's just, it's not sort of in my job description.
Sure.
But and in speaking with them and in speaking with the people that I do get to engage with within our municipalities, it's a passion project for everyone. And it has been from day one, right from the politicians, the mayors, the councillors, to the parks planning people and all of the administrative people that we work with. There's, no one ever has a bad word to say about it, and everyone's just excited to see it be completed and excited for what it means for the community. So
beautiful. Have you encountered any reasonable or rational or logical sort of, I guess, even just sober second thought about any of this? Like, has anyone ever, a public official ever stood up and said, we don't need to do this, or we ought to think about how we go about this?
Definitely it needs to be well thought out, and
Sure.
I think that's obvious that it has been well thought out from the beginning. Just to get as far as we did in the time that we did is just a huge a win for the
Okay.
whole community. No, I don't think I've ever actually heard anyone say.
Interesting.
I
There's
don't
been no
think
real
this
resistance?
There's
or-
been some, maybe we should do this instead of this,
Sure.
you know, just depending on what's happening with the economy. COVID kind of switched some things up as to, you know, but it at the end of the day, it was just, you know, the River Valley Trail system became such a go-to place for everyone that we just kind of looked at each other and went, this is why we're doing this. You
Right
know,
on.
this is what the community needs.
Right on.
Yeah.
You know, so I did take a cruise through was it the executive summary or the plan of action from 2018? Within a few pages of reading that thing, I don't know who wrote that, or if it was written by committee, but there was a voice of, I would say, I'm not going to say desperation, but urgency in the way that was written, as in we need to get this done. We need to get this corridor united now.
I think the time is now for moving forward with our trail naming initiatives. So
Okay.
that's something that maybe we can chat about a little bit because
Sure.
that's something new this year. But I think so at our AGM in April, all 6 municipal shareholders voted unanimously to proceed with the trail naming initiative, which means that we will have one unifying name for the trail from end to end. Now, of
Nice.
course, it snakes through a number of parks that are already named and things like that. Those park names will remain.
Okay.
But it's just so that we can put a name, and if you name it, it's a real thing, right? So
Totally.
the trail itself will have its own identity.
Very cool.
And it will become a marketable identity, and so that speaks again to our economic diversity within our communities, in that it can become a tourist attraction on its own that can be marketed worldwide, such as a lot of very similar trails throughout the world are. So I'm not even sure what your initial question
Yeah,
was there,
actually,
or
I
how
just
we
thought I forgot what it was.
forayed into that, but you know, that's sort of the direction that we're heading, and yeah.
Oh, right on. That's okay. Well, that's fair if you want to go there. I wish I could remember what that question was, but anyway. So the trail naming initiative. So that's interesting. Like the trail will obviously come, for instance, through Laurier Park.
Absolutely.
But it would have its name, but then we just recognize that we're here in Laurier Park.
Right, so there'll be some additional signage added in. We already have some sort of prototype markers made up as to what those may look like. And, you know, we don't want to also speckle the River Valley Trail with more and more signage. I mean, that's
Sure.
not something that we want to take away from the actual beauty of the nature and the surroundings. So it'll be well thought out signage. Some places in some municipalities will need a full marker.
Okay.
Some will just need a little logo, because we will have a logo
Nice.
with our trail name added onto existing signage, just so that once you get on the trail, you know how to stay on the trail and you know where you are on the trail.
Very
So
cool.
there'll be additional wayfinding things for safety as well, you know, so that emergency services can find you if ever need be. And also there'll be, on some of the signs, there'll be a QR code that you can scan with your
Nice.
mobile device. And it will give you some historical background about the area, you know, maybe some indigenous history, some
Sure.
cultural history, some settler history,
Okay.
just some really interesting facts about the area. And, you know, it hasn't been fully thought out yet, but
all right.
that's the area we're going.
But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm starting to see some signage pop up in the parks. Is that kind of the look, or is it all going to be refurbished?
It'll be, well, that's City of Edmonton
redesigned.
work for the most
Okay.
part. They are initiating a big wayfinding signage program themselves throughout
Yeah.
their parks. But ours will be in addition to.
Okay. Are there going to be like mile markers or like kilometer?
Yeah, well, that's the idea.
That's cool.
So mile 1 would be in Devon.
Okay.
And then it would go to mile, whatever it ends up being, around 100
Sure.
around Fort Saskatchewan.
Oh, right on. I guess because that's the direction of flow, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Of the
cool.
river, yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember my question was now, or what that question was when I was reading the executive summary, and there was this tone of urgency,
right.
and you said that there's an urgency to get the trail named.
Yeah. So nature is working with us. This is nature's
Yeah,
background
this is-
music.
I wouldn't have it any,
Love it.
any
This
other
is
way.
what I sleep to, actually,
Oh, right
is
on.
rain sounds.
Great.
Yes. Well, I think because the sense of urgency is in that our phase 1 grant is coming to an end, so
Okay.
it needs to be fully spent out. We do have a deadline of March of 2025.
Okay.
So all infrastructure needs to be in place and open to the public by the end of 2024.
Okay.
So after that, in order to close that 23-kilometer gap in the southwest and to add those very important things that the public always tells us they want, more parking and more washrooms.
Oh. People, huh?
Yeah.
Got to put my shit somewhere else.
Exactly. And, of course they do. And
Yeah.
we completely understand and hear that. And but we will need our phase 2 grant for that.
Okay.
So
all right.
that is probably where that sense of urgency maybe that you were reading comes from,
Right.
in that we will begin some pretty a focus on our advocacy for that phase 2 grant.
Okay. So again, just to be clear, phase 2 is fully approved funding-wise, or you're still pushing for
No,
it?
we don't have the funding. The municipalities, so it's within the plan of action already. It was
Okay.
already built out in the plan of action in 2008. And the municipalities are on board with it.
Okay.
They will have their 1/3 funding available. We just need the province to come to the table and provide, and the federal government as well. So, yeah.
Should be no trouble with the
No
provincial.
problem whatsoever. No.
we'll leave that there. How about, what's the ask? Is it 90 million?
Well,
right?
that would be our wish list
Sure,
ask.
that'd be
I mean,
nice.
if we wanted to, if we were to do absolutely everything, but certainly we could, have that prorated over a number of years, or we could get by with another 30 million to close that gap. It would be
Okay.
probably about 20 to 30 million dollars. So, to add that extra infrastructure, every dollar gives us just, a little more washroom or a little extra
Sure.
somewhere. So yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I guess it is a fine balance. Like, in the ask of 90 million, there's new projects, there's new capital projects, then is there updating existing amenities?
Not so much, no. Once the projects are finished, they actually become the full property of the municipality that they reside in. The RVA does not manage or maintain their projects.
Okay.
So those
Good
go
know.
to the municipality's infrastructure maintenance programs.
Okay.
So if they need to upgrade or do anything like that. Now, having said that, some of the boat docks and launches, when they suffer
Right.
ice damage and things, when they're brand new and they're not even open, but they, we help where we can, but that's not our mandate.
Okay. Sidebar, have you had any communication with the guy who owns the riverboat? Not the new riverboat, but the riverboat at all?
Not a lot of communication, no,
Man.
other than being aware of their project. But
That guy's having a tough go.
well, Mother Nature is its own force, and it's not a negotiable thing. So.
No, it's really not. And yeah, he's losing that negotiation. I would love to talk to that guy actually, but I don't know if you know, but that boat is just docked up over there.
Yeah,
and
I do see it there,
Yeah.
and I think it's a fantastic thing, but definitely challenges there for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, well that's 90 million, huh?
Well, we could get by with less.
Okay.
So
No,
if
don't
we could
say
just-
that.
Yeah, we'd love
need
90
100.
million. 30 million would get us by, but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Mhm.
What's kind of the key piece of that phase 2? Like, what's if it had to be the one, or what's kind of the?
It's closing the 23-kilometer gap.
Right.
So we need to negotiate with those landowners, get the right-of-ways, and sometimes that comes with some compensation, of
Mhm.
course, and then to build the trail themselves. So the construction cost of the trail.
Okay.
So that's number one on our wish list. And then, of course, that amenity overlay was always seen as sort of a phase 3.
Ah.
So along the whole entire 100 kilometers of the trail, if it's going to be utilized by residents and tourists alike, there will need to be some amenities.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Now that gap again is the southwest.
Yes.
From Ellerslie to Devon.
that's right.
Okay. You mentioned too, though, and I keep people want more parking and more washrooms. I guess there's something to be said for striking a balance here between. So the desperation in that document, I think, came from what you're saying, like give us the money, now, sooner than later. But also, population is booming, and Edmonton and the River Valley generally is being infringed upon by population. So, to me, the whole thing seems like you're striking a balance between use and accessibility and keeping people out of it in some sense too, right?
Yeah, well, the fact is that we're in the middle of a major metropolitan area.
Okay.
I mean, it's, and the population's only increasing.
Yeah.
So, obviously people are going to go into the River Valley whether there are access points or not.
Mm-hmm.
And our mandate is if we give people designated access points and areas to be, like designated trails, that will lessen the footprint,
Okay.
and maybe some of the destructive qualities of the human footprint. I mean,
Right.
we are what we are, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and just also teaching people about the etiquette and the respect and the kindness. I mean, we're going to have to learn to get along, and so
Right.
why not just be respectful and kind regardless? And giving those access points, I think that's just huge, because people are going to access it whether those points are there or not.
Mhm.
And if we can sort of bottleneck them into certain areas.
Sure.
You know, and the bigger the trail gets, the more areas there are for people to spread out, which is also hugely important. I mean,
Okay.
COVID showed us that, you know, most people go to their favorites or the well-known spots, but
Yep.
there are many, many, many other access points throughout the 6 municipalities that aren't that far of a drive, or you know, you could probably cycle there or jump in your kayak or whatever you
Sure.
wanted to do, and you know, go explore a little bit and find some more off the beaten areas, because there are lots.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, get out of the main core and explore a little, and there are access points that have been created for you to enjoy different areas.
Okay. That's interesting that you, again, it's tough, right? Because you want people in there. The whole point is to use it in some ways, but so do you see that the corridor, the unified corridor, and the sort of surrounding amenities as being kind of the centerpiece of it all, and then any sort of development, any growth has to work around that?
The municipalities have very stringent regulations about any kind of development within
Right.
the River Valley, and
Good.
we have to meet those. In fact, our regulations are a little bit higher to meet, because we are also provincially and federally funded, especially when it comes to environmental studies and Indigenous engagement and those types of things. We meet very stringent regulations for all of our projects, as do the municipalities. So, you know, everything that happens within the River Valley is very well thought out. The footprint is well thought out. You know, some of the things that we do, we don't just build concrete infrastructure, but we plant more trees. We you know, reforest areas. Some of the, you know, the Rossdale power plant area, there's sort of a little bit of planning going on around that project. Perhaps in the future, it's not approved by council yet. But if that does go ahead, a lot of it is planting trees and providing a screen to some of the, you know, the cemetery there and things like
Sure.
that. So it's not just about concrete.
Well said. Well said. You mentioned Indigenous affairs, and I think we should go there at some point. I'm also wondering what, if any, because you know there's a homeless population in this town, and they live in the River Valley sometimes. Is that anything that's on your guys' radar as far as a need or something that could be addressed through your work, or just?
Well, that's more the municipalities' work.
Sure.
I mean, we stick to our mandate of our plan of action and our 13 projects, and
Sure.
and work with the municipalities wherever they can, wherever we can actually, you know, help.
Sure.
But you know, I can't really speak to the homeless population. Indigenous relations are a huge, you know, that's very important to our work, of course.
Yes.
We do acknowledge that we're on Treaty 6 territory, and we acknowledge that before each one of our board meetings.
Right on.
And we have some really excellent relations with some Indigenous nations and communities within the area. We've invited them to sit on our naming committee.
Okay.
Some Indigenous representation, you know. Hopefully, maybe, I mean, I can't speak for what the name will be. That will be the committee's work, but definitely lots of thought going into the Indigenous history and culture.
Right. I would have to think, especially at this point, when it's becoming more and more clear how the land was, you know, first inhabited by them, and they were violently dispossessed of it, you know. So that's interesting. Now, I remember reading about there's a Métis settlement like out west on Big Island, or around there.
Yep.
So those are people, for instance, that you're dealing with?
That's more so the Big Island Provincial Park is more of the province and the city of Edmonton, and Enoch Cree Nation has so sort of a tri-party agreement there, and we're considered a stakeholder, but those aren't our trails. And that's not our the provincial park that's the province.
Okay, so this RVA Trail, to be named, would steer around Big Island?
Sort of around Big Island. There are some trails on either side there within our plan of action. They're not there yet.
Okay.
That's sort of phase 2 work. And we're happy to work with the province in whatever capacity that they would want to work with us on that, and City of Edmonton, of course, and Enoch as well. So that's all sort of to be determined. I believe their deadline to determine what they're actually going to do there is the fall of 2022. So we'll have to stay tuned and see what they decide.
Well, yeah, some big stuff coming in the next few years, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Do you have a sense of what phase 3-4 would look like? Is that even on the radar, or because the work can't ever finish, right?
Right. Yeah. You know, what is the future of the RVA?
Sure.
You know, right now we kind of focus on where we are and where we, to some extent, where we want to be, of course. But you know, we have our bridges, for connectivity in the Northeast, working on that right now. Some work downtown still with the Rossdale Power Plant area, perhaps if that goes ahead. Our Southwest Gap, just because we don't necessarily have the funds right now to proceed with that trail construction, it doesn't mean that we don't stay in contact with the landowners and sort of relationship build and things like that where we can. So we're always focusing on that. And then, of course, our advocating for our Phase 2 grant is pretty time-consuming and important to us.
Sure.
But, once that 100-kilometer trail is complete and connected, and all of the amenities that the public needs and wants, in so much as we can provide are there, we see it, as something like the Cabot Trail or the Bruce Trail or the West Coast Trail, to just showcase Edmonton and the metropolitan region and the River Valley for the beauty and the jewel that it really is.
100%. It's like you said, it's 100 kilometers. It'll be fully connected eventually. There's really nothing like that in the world.
Well, there are trails like that in the world, but ours could certainly be a shining example of one of them. Yeah.
Is it not one of the largest unbroken urban green spaces?
It's actually considered the largest urban park in North America.
Okay.
Yeah. So bigger than Central Park in New York, which is considered one of the largest urban parks. But yes, one of the largest urban parks in North America,
That's
if
great.
Not the largest. Yeah.
I think it's largest.
The
We're
largest.
22 times bigger than Central Park in New York.
Right. We got the length, I guess, right?
Length. Yeah.
Right on. So now, where are we at with? One thing I wanted to ask you was there was some talk about a promenade or like a boardwalk. Not a boardwalk, but a promenade, right? Like in Rossdale. Is that going ahead?
It's in the preliminary design, so they did do public consultation. There was some engagement online with things like that because, of course, all the consultation was done during COVID, so it couldn't be in person.
Right.
There are still lots of information on some websites and things like that. And City of Edmonton, I think if you went there, you could probably find still their what came out of their consultation.
Okay.
So they do have a preferred design in mind. And they have actually, at the end of this month, at the end of June, council will review that design and decide on funding. So whether or not it goes ahead will be determined then. Okay,
so it's still up in the air. So
yes.
Yeah. It'd be great to see it. I think there's something like that is it San Antonio? Something like that? Just to get, again, it's getting people down there, but also there'd be some economic kickback, I think, because businesses could probably...
Sure, yeah. It's a phased out project as well. The initial phase is actually quite low-key, and again, when I spoke to replanting some greenery and things like that, there's a lot of that in there, working with what's already there, some additional sort of daytime usage areas and things like that, but the grand scope of it was a very large, I believe it was around $30 million project just for that. So again, it's going to be phased out.
Sure.
But yeah.
Right. What do you personally think about that? Is that something you think is useful?
Well, I think it's interesting and exciting. It doesn't really speak to the mandated connectivity that the RVA is all about, connecting sort of that length of trail, but it's more, comes, and then RVA is a part of the initial concept, like the option one. So sort of the things I've already spoken about, but the amenity overlay that comes later, right? So some different things that residents and tourists alike can enjoy along the way.
Okay, we just want to get the hallway built first before we
go and then we fill in the blanks.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Right on. Well, I think it's great to hear that there's just this driving need to get it connected, and then we can, then we can, like you say, fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks. Because there was also some talk about a gondola.
Well, that's a separate group altogether.
Oh, okay. That's a private venture.
That's a private venture, yeah. So, we watch it from afar, and we were asked to sit on the public's stakeholder sort of to give some input on what we thought and how we thought it would engage. But none of those meetings have proceeded yet, so we'll wait and see what happens there.
Well, and this fall, Edmonton is re-electing council and mayor. Do you foresee that being maybe you have to restart some relationship building, or hopefully pick up where you left off with whoever takes over? Yeah,
well, it depends on who gets into office, I guess. We do have great relationships with some of the candidates already, and certainly the people that are staying will end up staying. We've already developed relationships with, but like I said, none of the work that the RVA has done has ever really had any, I'm not going to say that there aren't naturalists and things like that think the River Valley shouldn't be touched. But, that's within their opinion, and they're completely entitled to it. But in general, I would say that we get very, very positive feedback from both the public and the local politicians. So.
Okay. Yeah, that was one question I had about like public opinion generally. I can't see it there being, like you say, there's people that maybe just think we should be out of here totally, but where does that come from? Do you have any idea why they believe that?
Well, you know, I can't speak for them, so I can't really say, but humans leave a footprint, and some of us it's larger than others, so I think that just comes back to very important pieces of our puzzle, in that we say respect the river valley like it's a living, breathing thing that it is, and it needs to be taken care of just like anything or anyone else.
No, that's fair to say. That's probably the best way to look at it, right? Look at it like a giant living organism that we're stewarding it. We're using it because that's what humans do, but we're doing it in a sustainable way.
Yeah, it's all about balance. You talked about balance before,
sure.
and anything is about balance. It's about striking that balance between use and enough care and thought and respectfulness put into it that the use doesn't do unrepairable damage.
Right. And then that use is still a net positive.
Absolutely. Okay. A net positive, for the river valley itself, because it regenerates, and it is its own living, breathing entity, and if we look after it, it will be here for generations to come. But also ourselves, we're always renewing ourselves and becoming something else and new. So it can all work hand in hand.
Absolutely. Now, there was a couple things, if I could just maybe just rapid fire a few things just quickly. Talk about a new nature center. There's some stuff that I read in the document, the Cole Interpretive Center, a new nature center, an aquarium. Was this just stuff that was more like a maybe? Or
those aren't RVA projects either, actually. Okay. Those are also sort of private initiatives, or initiatives that different organizations have come together and thought about. So the aquarium idea, we did kind of have just a get to know you meeting with that group that's trying to put that together. But again, those aren't RVA projects. So they would, again, to me, they come in as, we've worked to create this sort of unifying trail, and along this trail could be different things that interest different people, both residents and tourists alike. So those kind of projects I see as coming in at that point.
Right. Again, it's like if a private venture wanted to come in and fill the gap afterwards, although it's kind of cool that you guys are stewardship in some sense, right? Where like you've met with some of these groups and you're kind of saying, here's our mandate. If you want to come in, fine, but know that we're kind of...
and we're happy to share information on, because lots of different organizations have questions about funding and how to proceed, and just, we like to just help make connections wherever we can as well. So.
Right on. I'm curious about how you... Was there a reason that you found yourself drawn not to the Alliance but to the River Valley generally? Like, is it something you grew up with, or are you from Edmonton?
I'm from Alberta. I'm from central Alberta. I grew up about 100 kilometers from here, but I came to school here as a 18-year-old. And I've pretty much been here ever since. I got married and then moved away a little bit, but then we came back home, and this is home to me, and I've always just felt a sense of renewal in being out in nature. So I've always seeked out nature, and I knew of the trails and I spent time in them prior to coming to the RVA as an employee. But to me, it was just a natural fit. And every time that I get to spend a morning, like I did this morning, out here, this is my job, and I couldn't be more excited and thrilled about it.
Right on.
Yeah.
How long with the Alliance for you?
I'm going into my 7th year. Okay. So I was 6 years previous in a finance manager role, so more managing claims for municipalities and the tri-party funding and things like that. But I got to see firsthand, because it's a small organization as far as administration goes. We have a board of directors and committees, so we have definitely a lot of different people, volunteers and things like that, but the staff itself has always been a small office. So I got to work very closely with the previous executive directors, and they've all done amazing work and had such passion for the River Valley and the trail system as well, that I just got to learn and grow from that. So I took over that role when Brent Collingwood, our previous executive director, who'd been with the organization for some 10 years, retired in December. So yeah, I got to step into those shoes, which has been amazing. That
must have felt... Did you have a sense that was coming? If I could, I would?
Absolutely. I was approached to see if to sort of garner my interest. And of course, I
Sure.
was absolutely 100% in and excited.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to sort of shadow the previous executive director for a few months
Okay.
prior to his exit. So that was great.
Right on. And it's been a seamless transition.
Well, I wouldn't call it seamless. I don't know what other people's perspective is, but for me, it's just been a huge growth opportunity, and I'm excited to know where we are and where we're going, and just work with the most amazing, wonderful, dedicated group of people, and most of them are volunteers.
Oh,
so
really?
It's fantastic.
Okay, that's important to know. What is it? I wonder what it is. I mean, for me personally, the River Valley was somewhere to escape to. You know, when I was younger, it was a place to grow up, create, you know, cause a reasonable amount of trouble with people. Not anything too crazy, but, you know, it's a place to go and a place to get away from this urban life that we live. Do you have any sense of what it is in you that just draws you back time and again to nature?
I think we're just ingrained. I think it's just ingrained in who we are as human beings. In fact, I think our health and our mental well-being suffer when we're isolated from it. And I think, you know, maybe some of the positives, if there are some that came out of the pandemic, were a lot of people found ways to reconnect to nature, because it was the only place to go where you could safely distance yourself. You know, the only place you could go to run, because the gyms were all closed. There were, unless you had a treadmill in your house,
Sure.
I guess, or something like that. But I think a lot of people were reawakened to the need for that connection. And I think it's actually not just individual to myself or to people that like to get out there and do it, but to every single person on this planet.
100%. It's built in us, right? I mean, we came from, I mean, I'm not going to go too far with this, but these are our roots essentially, is the outdoors. It's the greenery, being tied to the natural cycles of the seasons and all that. It's how you could live without it, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, and I think maybe that's where some of the disease and the mental, you know, health issues and things like that some people have, you know. I think that's where, I'm not going to say, I mean, I realize people have had trauma and things like that, but I think being in nature, it's just genuinely healing and giving, and you know, it fills you back up. It fills your cup back up.
Fills you back up. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about that. I'll say it if you won't. I think, yes, of course, there's many reasons that we're in the shape we're in, but there's there's a disconnect from what we are. And I like to say that as humans, we're running some pretty old software, you know, and yet we're forcing ourselves to live in a system that's very new and modern and in some ways not even real, you know, so much like people will be listening to this in a mediated way. So much of our life is mediated. I mean, how much did we talk through email before we met, you know? To live that life and to not then have this, I think you do go insane in some way. You lose a piece of what...
I think you lose an integral part of who we are.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
So is there a sense that when you're going to these municipalities, these officials, and giving them your pitch for what you want, that there's kind of a warm sort of you know what I'm saying? Is there a...
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we because we have 6 municipal shareholders, we report to councils at least annually, if not more often. We engage with them in lots of different ways too, but you know, there's always sort of that just genuine respect for each other and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to do for the community. And it's a warm, fuzzy feeling for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm getting it now just staring at this green, just kind of radiating. You can't explain it. It's without language. I think it just is. It's where we came from, right?
It is. And this is our home.
This is our home. Now, I thank you for your time. It's been great. I've learned. It's good for me to really understand what you're doing. I know there was times when you're like, I've told you this already.
No worries whatsoever. I'm happy to repeat it. It solidifies it in my own head as well. So
sure.
I'm happy.
Now, I guess just kind of to wrap it up a little bit, and you did say this once, but just to get it, the average person should just show respect, show compassion, be aware around here. Now, what if I wanted to do a little bit more? Maybe not financially, but if I want to give my time on this volunteer, how can I sort of get in touch with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, well, of course, check out our website. It's very interactive. There's lots of, do some exploring in there. Click on the links. It'll take you different places. You'll learn lots of different information. The ambassador sign-up link is on there, the sign-up page, if you want to get in touch with us and become an ambassador. Makennah already kind of explained what that program is about, but if you ever want more information, all of our contact information is on our website.
Okay.
So feel free to reach out to us via phone or email or, whatever. And also, if you're ever in in a position where you're out there speaking with your municipal or provincial representatives in the government, put in a plug for the RVA and connecting that last 23 kilometers of trail and how important it is to you.
I love it. Kristine, Makennah, I really appreciate your time. This was a big one for me. I think it went reasonably well, and thank you. Was there anything maybe that were, just as far as your brand or your what you really are calling on the public for, or do you feel you've sort of...
I think you were really comprehensive, Patrick, so I thank you for your very insightful questions. You've obviously done your homework as well, and I appreciate that very much. And just thank you so much for the opportunity to maybe inform your listeners a little bit more about what we do and what's out here for them. And I hope they enjoy it and love it as much as we do.
Absolutely. And actually, you know what? For the best results, listen to this in the River Valley. How about that?
Yeah, that's great. You can hear, we even have the nature sounds in the background, the rain and the wind and the thunder. And
couldn't have asked for more.
Couldn't have asked for better.
No. Kristine and Makennah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you for listening to the North Bank Media Podcast. If you enjoy this conversation, please subscribe on YouTube and give us a like. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe as well and leave a 5-star review.